Let's Talk 716 Sports. Today's guest is Anthony Romeo from the Hoof Podcast.
Hey, what's going on, Robbie? 4-0. Pretty good day.
So, how was your night so far?
Oh, it was good. Yeah, I went and watched the game with some friends, which was always good. And of course, the Bills won. So even though it wasn't the best game in some senses, they won, and that's what counts in the end, right? You play to win the game. 4-0. Can't be better than that, quite literally. So we're looking good at this point, and that's putting it lightly.
So, what were your takeaways from the game?
Ooh, yeah, some big takeaways from this game. I think the first takeaway is the offense is working, right? Passing mainly is going to be our attack on offense, and we saw that the Raiders were weak against the run against New England, but still we decided and we did pass a lot more on the Raiders, and Josh Allen was able to get it done. He connected. I think he 24 for 34 or something like that. Uh, and he was finding every receiver we had. He passed it to 10 different guys, I think, today, and you know really was zinging the ball, played really well. I think Josh Allen is the offense. That the offense is going to go through Josh Allen, which may be different than what we expected coming in. Maybe we thought they were going to try and run the ball more and then pass a little bit, but Josh Allen finished just shy of another 300-yard game. And I think he could have got it if they didn't at the end just run out the clock, and not try and go for it on 3rd and 12. They just ran it up the middle. Um, but yeah, big game on offense and defensively. Although they held up in the end when it mattered most, they've got to do better. That's another big takeaway for me. The defense has got to improve. They made a couple of big splash plays when they needed to, which saved us. But ideally, you'd like to see them play consistently and get a few more stops when they need to, especially a team that was this injured. The Raiders weren't the Rams last week, were very healthy and played us well. But the Raiders this week pretty beat up, and they still were able to move the ball on us quite a bit. Luckily, we held them to field goals when it mattered and stopped them in the fourth quarter when it really mattered most. Um, but yeah, the defense overall has got to play better, I think. And yeah, the Bills are 4-0. Can't beat that though. So hopefully we improve going forward. If every game they start to improve, you know, this Bills team is going to be a dangerous team.
What was the most important part of the game?
Ooh, I'd say there were the number one key play for me, that I thought was really the key play of the game was the Quentin Jefferson strip sack. So he did it all by himself. He rammed the middle. He got through. He got his arm in, batted the ball out of David Carr's hand, and then fell on it and recovered it. So it was a strip sack for him. That was in the fourth quarter. Gave us the ball back in good field position, and was really a huge key to the game. So I'd say that was probably the key play for me. The other play that I thought of right away was the 50-yard pass to Diggs down the field from Josh Allen. Oh my God, what a beautiful pass. He had all the time in the pocket, let it slide, let it fly, and put it right on the money where only Diggs could catch it. And he did, way down into the red zone. And we scored on that drive. So yeah, those were two huge plays, two big plays of the game, I thought, for me. Yeah. How about you? Did you have something different on those plays of the game?
Um, that Beasley catch in the end zone.
Ooh,
Um,
yeah.
that that was a really good catch, and like he got upended at the end there.
Yeah,
Um,
luckily he came back after that because he did exit the game for a little while, but he came back in the second half healthy,
yeah,
which is always good.
and then when Josh Allen went down for a
Oh,
bit there, with
yeah.
his left shoulder.
Yeah, I think we were all saying a prayer during that time, like, "Oh no, not please, not Josh Allen, anybody but him. Let him be healthy, let him be good." But again, I think they checked him out, they made sure he was okay. They brought him back into the locker room, but he was able to come out and play the whole second half and look good. So, and it was his left shoulder, luckily, not his throwing shoulder. So, his right shoulder. So, luckily, he's okay. Hopefully, it's not too much and it's not something that's going to bother him moving forward. But yeah, big key to the game for sure.
And that that pick by Josh Norman. That
Yeah, he punched the ball out. Yeah, and recovered the fumble. Yeah, that again. The turnovers were very key in this game. That was a big one. He was able to get his hand in, punch the ball out, and recover it. Um, and for his first game back and his first game as a Bill, he definitely made an impact there. Levi Wallace got hurt, so that left Norman, probably playing more time than they expected in his first game coming back from injury. But he was able to make the big impactful play when we needed it most. So luckily, that was yeah, again another big play for the game, definitely.
and when Coach McDermott challenged that play, it was a touchdown, I guess, for John Brown.
Yeah, that was frustrating for me because it seems like the NFL is always against the Bills on these calls, right? They called it not a touchdown, but on the replay, you could very much see that he's got the ball over the white line, which is all it needs to be, right? Is touch that white line and it's a touchdown. And then his knee actually touches on the white line and the ball is over the white line. And yet they said it's inconclusive on the replay. I don't understand it at all. Luckily, it was at the half-yard line or whatever, and Josh Allen just punched it in for the touchdown on the next play. But still, it's like, come on, the NFL needs to learn to get the call right, especially on a challenge, on a review. I think McDermott has a terrible record of not winning challenges and not knowing when to challenge. But I thought that was a great challenge by him. I'm very glad he threw the flag. But I don't know why they didn't call it a touchdown after review. Seems pretty silly, but luckily, again, in the end, it didn't end up affecting the game because Josh Allen got the ball in on the next play.
And I think that's where Tyler Bass missed that extra point because Corey Bojorquez had the laces in instead of out.
Uh-oh. Yeah, that's your guy, right? Corey Bojorquez. Yeah. So you said you saw some laces on that extra point. I actually didn't catch that at first, but it was definitely a big miss by him because that would have put us up 8 points instead of 7. And in the miss, obviously 7 is just a touchdown and extra point versus 8, you have to get the 2-point conversion. So it was a big play at the time. And luckily, again, the Bills were able to hang on defense and not make it more significant than it was.
Yeah, and on that instant replay, when they showed the instant replay, you could see that the laces were in and not out,
Yeah.
and and then he missed it.
Mm. No kicker likes to have the laces in. And I think Bojorquez definitely needs to work on that because that's his job. He's got to set that ball up for the kicker. And that means now the first field goal he missed was because the laces were in, and now he missed an extra point and the laces were not where they should have been. So yeah, Corey Bojorquez has to work on that if he's going to be the guy holding the ball, because eventually it's going to be a much bigger situation and have a bigger impact than it did in this game or even in that first game. But yeah, he's got to do better. And that was very observant by you because I didn't notice that at first when I was watching the game live.
And like when they went for that onside kick, um, somebody, I think it was Diggs that fell on it.
Yeah, I think so. And you could see the Raiders were getting very feisty at that point. They were trying to fight him for the ball underneath, even though it was clear he recovered it. And there was some pushing and shoving going on after the play. No penalties there, but still, they were clearly upset. They knew that was the end of the game, basically. Yeah, but it was a huge recovery for us because again, they had just scored. If they get the ball back, they're only down 7. But luckily, we recovered and were able to run out the clock and end the game.
And um, what do you think of that like handoff to Singletary like towards the end of the game there, and then Josh Allen like fell?
Oh yeah, that was a scary play, wasn't it? You're like, oh my God, all we're trying to do is run out the clock. Just take a knee at that point, right? But they're trying to just, run it up the middle and see if they can get anything and let the clock tick, because the Raiders did still have one timeout at that point. So you couldn't just take a knee and run the clock out. But yeah, it was definitely a scary little play there with like, oh no, don't fumble it or something, but luckily they did not. Yeah, so that was a big play. And then on the next play, Singletary had a longer run that allowed the clock to keep running, and then they were able to just take a knee and end the game there, which was huge. And we got to talk about Stephon Diggs' day, right? I mean, he's becoming, his nickname for me is Third Down Diggs, because it seems like when we need to play the most, Allen is able to throw it to Diggs on third down, and he always catches it. He always converts it. There was like a big 3rd and 5 catch. There was that catch down the field we talked about. Diggs ended up with over 100 yards again. And it's clear that he is a difference maker on this team at the wide receiver position. Even though we had 9 or 10 guys catch the ball today, Diggs is clearly the number one and is a big difference maker for us. And he had another good day today, catching the ball. And Allen's able to put it in those narrow windows to him where only he can catch it. And it's a beautiful sight to see.
Yeah. Like when Allen throws it to Diggs, you know like it'll be like a first down or like close to it.
Yeah, high confidence that he's going to catch the ball and make the play. That's for sure. Even when he's being covered sometimes.
Yeah. And like when Diggs is downfield, Allen can see him and throw it over to him.
Yeah, they definitely have a good chemistry working already. We've seen it in the first few games. We know they work together in the offseason, and that really seems to have helped them a lot, because they definitely have the chemistry when it comes into the game. The timing is down, the chemistry is there, the trust is there. He's willing to throw it up to him even when he's covered, and believes that he can get the ball, and he does, right? He's come through for us multiple times in these first 4 games. So he's the guy for sure. He's what we needed on this team.
And hopefully next week we would be playing the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, right. This game is up in the air right now because the Titans are dealing with their COVID spread right now, and they had their game this week with the Steelers canceled, right? And this is serving as their bye week now, and they moved around the schedule moving forward so that they could play again. I think it's like week 8 when one of the teams had a bye, and they moved another game, the Baltimore Steelers game, so that they could fix the schedule that way. But they don't have that leeway to cancel another game. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And they can't move the game to Monday either, because the Bills are scheduled to play on Thursday against Kansas City. So, you can't have that short of a week. It'll be interesting to see what the NFL does. They might just make them play or force them to forfeit. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they do moving forward, because they're going to have to set the precedent for the rest of the season and how this is going to go in dealing with COVID.
Yeah, and then we play Kansas City the following week. That's gonna
Yeah.
be another. That's gonna be another tough game, I think.
Thursday night football against Kansas City. Yeah. So it's a primetime game with 2 offenses that have looked really, really good. I think our defense is better than Kansas City's defense, which could end up being the edge, but their offense is the best in the NFL, and everybody knows that. So our offense is going to have to hang with their offense, and it's probably going to be a high scoring game. And if our defense can just stop them a few times and hold them where they need to, it could end up going our way. And I honestly think the Bills are going to beat Kansas City in that game. So it's going to be huge. We got to get through Tennessee first if we end up playing that game. I think if they were 100% healthy, that'd be a tough matchup for the Bills, because that defense is really good. and they have some playmakers on offense too. I think we could still come out with the victory in that game. But again, we don't know what the status of their players is going to be, who's going to be out for that game because of the COVID situation, if the game is even going to be played. And then, yeah, that'll hopefully lead us to 5-0 versus 5-0 going to Kansas City, or Kansas City playing in Buffalo on that Thursday night game. And who knows, maybe they'll have fans too. Cuomo's supposed to be visiting to decide. So hopefully they allow fans for that game, even if it's just 5,000.
And they have that running back, Derrick Henry.
Yeah,
Um,
he's a beast. Scary
yeah,
guy on the field.
yeah. And last year we played him, and he he kind of carved up our defense a little bit there last year.
Yeah, definitely. And they were playing with, at that time, with Marcus Mariota as their quarterback still. So now maybe, depending on the COVID thing again, we're planning to see Ryan Tannehill, our old friend from Miami days, who was never able to beat the Bills that well with Miami either. So we'll see if the Bills still have his number playing quarterback. But yeah, Derrick Henry's definitely the biggest threat on their offense. Big dude who just plows through people. He's done it to us before. And even if you know, have guys covering him and ready for him, he can still make a big play. And Tannehill's pretty efficient. So when you think they're going to run and they can do a short pass, you know, he's a good quarterback for that kind of offense. So it's certainly not, we can't overlook this game, even though, again, we don't know who's healthy, who's going to play, if the game is even going to be played. But if it is, you definitely got to focus on that game first before thinking about Kansas City, because you know, when you're in this situation and you're the Bills and you're thinking about playing the defending Super Bowl champions in prime time, you can, you know, your mind can wander and go ahead, but you want to make sure the players are thinking about the game that's directly in front of them, at least for now, in Tennessee. So one game at a time. And McDermott's usually pretty good about keeping his players on track like that. So hopefully they think about that first game, you know, Tennessee first, then we start getting ready for that big game against Kansas City.
And hopefully when we play Tennessee, like, I mean, it it looked like Edmonds played pretty good today, but um, maybe they'll get him more involved. Or
Yeah, I mean, he still looks like he's a little hurt. Something isn't right about him. I don't know. It seems like his speed is a little slower, his range is a little less, but maybe it's just he's coming back from the injury and he's building back up to where he was before the injury. Yeah, we definitely want him to be 100% versus Tennessee, because again, Derrick Henry is going to be barreling through that line. So you definitely want to have your linebackers ready to tackle him, and it might take multiple people to tackle him. But the last thing you want to see is the missed tackles, which we had a lot of in this game against the Raiders. Then when they break tackles, you get much more yardage, much bigger plays. We definitely have to limit that versus Tennessee, because they're so good at running the ball, they can control the clock too and keep the ball out of the hands of our offense, which is where we really want the ball to be now, right? Because we know that we can score on offense, and we have a dynamic offense ourselves, even though Tennessee has a pretty good defense as well. So it's a really good matchup when we're both healthy, and I'm hoping that'll be the case when they play, and they will play next week on Sunday. Yeah.
and like Trey White made a good play today on one of those series that
Yeah,
they had.
Yeah, he batted the ball down. It came right through the guy, and he jumped in front of the ball and batted it down. It looked like he could have tried and made a play on it and try and catch it, but instead he just put his hand out and punched the ball down, which is all he needs to do. That's a great play by him. I think he got beat on one play earlier in the day on a pass similar over the middle. The slant guy got in front of him, and Trey White missed it. So the next time he was ready for it, and he's like, "Yeah, I got you back now." which was good to see because Trey White is definitely also, it seems like the whole defense is still getting into football shape and finding their football form. And hopefully they can go back to being that elite defense that we're used to.
Did you think that was a pass interference on Jordan Poyer when during that play?
No, I was a little confused by that call because even on the replay, it looked like he was in front of the guy who was going to catch. I forget who it was, and he got his hand up and batted the ball, but he didn't really make contact with the receiver. So I thought that was a bad call at the end of the game, toward the end of the game. But it was what it was, and they ended up scoring. So it didn't. Luckily, again, it didn't affect the outcome of the game, so we can kind of overlook it, but it's still a bad call no matter what. It's like, okay, but he didn't even really make contact with the receiver. He put his arm up and batted the ball. He was clearly going for the ball. And it was a late flag too. There was no flag, and then all of a sudden there was. So I don't know. That seemed a bit sketchy to me for sure, especially on the replay. But even in live action, I didn't think it was a penalty. But it gets called, and they end up scoring and capitalizing on it, which is what they have to do. And luckily, the Bills didn't let it, get to them and change the outcome of the game.
Yeah, because on some of those calls, like if you get a pass interference penalty or a 15-yard face mask,
Yeah,
it could swing the momentum in the game.
certainly. Yeah, big chunks of yardage, right? You're giving it to them when you have boneheaded plays like that. But I think Poyer gets a pass on that one because I don't really think it was a penalty. I think it was just a good play. But yeah, and the Bills are trying to limit those kind of plays. They did have a few penalties today that weren't that great, holding penalties that kind of took away plays. But you're going to have that in most games. Every team's going to do that every once in a while, and they're going to call it. But there weren't any egregious mistakes penalty wise that cost us anything major today, which was good. Again, you want to be disciplined. And there were a couple times I think where the Raiders were trying to antagonize our players. There was the one personal foul on Mitch Morse when he was under the pile. They were literally dragging him by the face mask. And when he got up, he just walked away. And I was like, man, we're lucky that Morse took that so well because it ended up being a penalty on the Raiders. But he could have got up and, tried swinging or something like that, arguing and shoving and got his own penalty. But he didn't. He just got up and went to his side. So it tells you that they're aware of trying not to, have those big impactful penalties, which the Raiders did have a few that helped us. So.
And what did you think of John Brown today playing in the game?
Yeah, he played pretty well. We know that he was on the injury report this week, so we weren't really sure what to expect. But he was good to go to play. He made a couple of big catches, when he needed to, as usual, as Brown does for us, and he's done for us since he was with us last year. But he also had a couple of untypical, or whatever you want to say, unusual plays for him, where he kind of either missed the ball or one drive there was two drops, not just him, but I think Croft dropped one, and then Brown dropped one, which was a kind of a momentum killer at the time.
And then Knox dropped one too.
Yeah, was it Knox? Yeah, maybe it was Knox too. Yeah, and so a couple of drop passes that can really cost you in big scenarios like that. But luckily, again, that they didn't end up changing the outcome of the game, and there was more good than bad from those people who made those plays. So that's always a net positive.
Was Gabriel Davis in the game today, or was he like?
I don't think he played as much as he did last week when Brown was injured and got taken out of the game. But he did score the game's first touchdown on the opening drive, where he was wide open in the end zone and Allen found him for the touchdown pass, which was great. So he did end up getting his second touchdown of the year already. And Allen and him seemed to have a really good connection. And when the ball is thrown his way, he makes a play, which is what you want to see for a guy like that. I think he filled in for Beasley a little bit, but they didn't get him the ball as much then. So it was mainly, Diggs and Brown, although we saw everybody got in on the action today. I mean, they had Andre Roberts out there for a few plays. They had McKenzie out there for a few plays. Everybody they could put out there, all of our receivers and our tight ends got a little bit of action today, which is good to see because, again, Allen can get the ball to everybody. Everybody's making plays. And when you have that many guys that are a threat, you can't cover everyone, right? Somebody's going to be open on the play, and Allen will find it. Allen did make one big mistake, right? That one play where he got sacked when we were in field goal range, and he kind of dropped back. He missed one tackle, and he had a ton of time, and then he waited just too long. He should have just thrown it away, and he held on to it and took the sack and lost 14 yards, and we ended up having to punt instead of kick a field goal, which was huge. And again, that's what one of Josh Allen's, homer ball. He tries to be the hero too much, and he can't, he's got to still remember to make the right decision. Okay, we don't need this. I can just throw it away. We'll kick the field goal rather than take the sack and bring us out of field goal range and have to punt. So we don't want to see stuff like that from Allen. But again, limited. He did a hell of a lot more good than he did make mistakes in this game, which is really good.
And like I saw when he went down, when he went to the locker room, whatever, he was holding his left shoulder or something.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully it's not. Hopefully that's not a serious injury.
Yeah, they let him come back out for the second half. So that tells me that they at least checked, probably did some x-rays and whatever, and said, okay, you have the movement you need. It's not broken. You can go back out there. And it's not his throwing shoulder. So that's good. And we saw the 50-yard pass was in the second half. So he could still sling it and he seemed to be okay. So hopefully that's not an issue going forward. It might be something that they try and rest just to, work it out if it ends up being bruised or anything. But hopefully he's okay long term with that.
What about I saw Zach Moss was on the inactive list. So do you think he'll be back next week, or do you think he'll be still sitting out?
Yeah, it depends on how his practices go this week. I think he could be back though, because he was starting to be back at practice this week. So that tells me maybe they said, we want to wait another week, see how you're doing in practice, and then bring you back. So hopefully he's back next week and we can have more of that two-headed monster run game. Although I think Singletary still deserves the majority of the touches, and maybe the short yardage and the goal line stuff will go to Moss. But yeah, it was definitely we want to have him back on the field for sure. And it seems like he's working his way back. Hopefully he'll be able to play if we play Tennessee on Sunday. Yeah.
What time is that game on Sunday for the Tennessee game?
Well, it's currently scheduled to be a 1:00 game. So hopefully it remains that way unless the NFL decides to change anything. Although at this point, honestly, I don't think they will change the game. It's either going to be canceled or, they're going to go forward as is because, again, the Bills play on Thursday that week. And Tennessee, I don't know that they would benefit from 1 or 2 more days at this point. It's going to be, whoever tests negative twice is allowed to play. Whoever doesn't, they're not allowed to play yet. So it'll be interesting to see. But 1:00 is that start time and back to normal. Today was a little bit unusual. I don't think the Bills have had a 4:30 game in a long time. So a few years at least. So a bunch of us were off of our daily routine on Sundays for sure.
What did you think of the stadium though? Like in Las Vegas.
Yeah, it looks like a big, beautiful stadium. I saw it when it was being built, but I haven't seen it completed yet in person. And it looks like one of the nicest places in stadiums in football now. And you'd expect that from a new location, new stadium, all the money they put in to build it. but it was weird watching with no fans because you don't really see the fan experience. One thing I noticed was it's totally black in there, right? The seats are all black. It's Raiders. That's the Raiders color. But man, it's a good thing it's a dome cover because 100-degree heat in Vegas with black seats would probably not go well. But yeah, it's a dome, so they keep it nice and temperature controlled in there. Yeah, and Josh Allen got yet another win in a new stadium, which is great for him. And we're their first loss in that stadium. So another history stat that will be on the sheet for in Las Vegas, the first visiting team to get a win in Las Vegas, the Buffalo Bills.
Did you think our defense could have done better in that game, or?
Yeah, definitely. I think they got to finish tackles. That's the most frustrating part. They seem to be able to get contact behind the line of scrimmage or at the line of scrimmage, but then the guy wiggles away and ends up getting a big play or a first down or, something else. That was tough to watch. It's just like, come on, that's play defense, tackle. That's your job. Come on. And there was a couple of open plays where it seemed like guys were just wide open, and it means that somebody blew their coverage who was supposed to be covering that guy. And that's really frustrating to see. But on the flip side of that, there were the good plays, right? There was that big fourth down, 4th and 1, right? And they ran the ball, and our defensive line just clobbered them right there for no gain. And that was huge to turn the ball back over to us. And there were, the couple of turnovers that we talked about were also huge. The punch out, the strip sack at key times in the game were huge for us as well. So they did make good plays on defense, but overall consistency, they have to get better. They have to get better. You can't allow big plays, big chunks, touchdowns. They've always been a bit of a bend but don't break offense, give up a lot of yards, but not enough to score a touchdown every time or, score points every time and fight for the turnovers and the sacks and the big plays when you need them. But overall, definitely got to get a little bit better.
Um,
Any other questions for this game or the future games? We talked about Tennessee and then Kansas City coming up.
Who's the next game after Kansas City?
Let's see. That's a good question. The Jets again, I believe. We play the Jets in New Jersey. So that'll be a game that we will be favored in, I'm pretty sure, at this point. It'll be interesting to see if Adam Gase is still the coach of the Jets at that point. We know that they've gotten off to a very rough start, 0-4. They couldn't even win on Thursday night against the Broncos, who were pretty beat up, and that game went back and forth. But then the Jets just got crushed in the fourth quarter. Sam Darnold has not looked good at all. It's kind of the opposite of Josh Allen. So another weak opponent on our schedule that we should be able to beat, especially in that game. We'll see if they're getting healthier. They're supposed to be getting Le'Veon Bell, their best player, back. They're supposed to be getting some of their wide receivers back. That could help the Jets. But that team is certainly not, their momentum is going in the opposite direction of the Bills. The Bills are 4-0. The Jets are 0-4. And we're going up, and they seem to be going down. So we'll see where they're at come that game.
And I think we play the Patriots sometime.
Yeah, that'll be one of the bigger games on the schedule for sure. That's still the team that we circle and put exclamation points by, right? Like, we've got to beat New England. And it's unfortunate that Cam Newton tested positive for COVID, but and he won't be in the game versus Kansas City this week, which is now on tomorrow night, Monday night. But if they lose that game, they'll be 2-2, and the Bills are 4-0. That gives us a 2-game lead. We've got to beat New England and then, solidify our spot as first place in the AFC East, which is what we really want. We want to win that division.
And hopefully maybe Jared Stidham is playing when we play New England instead of Cam Newton.
Either way, I'd like to face Cam and beat him and say, look, we beat you at the best you got right now. But I wouldn't complain if we were facing Jarrett Stidham, that's for sure, because I think that definitely gives us a bigger edge. So we'll see who's healthy at that time when the time comes. That's still a bit of ways away. So we'll see. But that's probably still the absolute biggest game on the schedule. Kansas City is the toughest opponent, the one that's going to tell us who we really are. If we can hang with Kansas City in that game and beat Kansas City, that would be a statement to the country. But we know as Bills fans, the team we really have to beat, the team that matters most on our schedule is New England. We've got to beat them. You need to beat them to win the division. You need to beat them to prove that you can beat them with Bill Belichick. And, you know, that solidifies our spot, taking the AFC East.
And I think Coach McDermott was with Cam Newton in Carolina.
Mm-hmm. He knows him well. So hopefully that gives us an edge if Cam does play against the Bills.
And then like Cam Newton knows Josh Norman.
Yeah, a couple of guys he used to play with on our side. Josh Norman, who's the defensive lineman, Quentin Jefferson, right? He was on there.
Mario Addison.
Or Addison, that's right, not Jefferson. Addison was the one, yeah. So, and he wants to sack him, he said, right? So we'll see. He said, oh yeah, Cam's one of the few I haven't sacked because he was on the same team as him. So that'll be an interesting matchup then, yeah.
Yeah, and this has been Let's Talk 716 Sports. Thank you to my guest, Anthony Romeo from the Hoof podcast, which airs on the Cover One YouTube channel on what days?
Tuesday night is the live show on YouTube, and our recorded podcast is on Friday on the Cover One network as well. You can look us up at Cover One Hoof Podcast. So our recorded podcast is Friday, and the live show is Tuesday night on YouTube on the Cover One network, the Hoof Podcast.
And you can find me on Twitter at Robbie39Bowler, and you can find Anthony at what's your Twitter?
It's my name at Anthony Romeo NY. So, yep, that's me on Twitter. I always interact with people on Twitter, so feel free to come talk to me there. And thanks for having me on, Robbie. It's always good talking to you. I like talking about the Bills. We like talking sports. And thanks for having me again.
And go Bills.
Go Bills.